think we are ready to start. Can you hear me? Can't hear me? Okay, Rick, you need to fix that. Can you hear me now? That Verizon commercial? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. I want to start by saying we have a birthday here today. Emmy Wood. It's her 17th birthday. So let's give her a little applause. That's precious. Anyway, we're so glad that you guys are here too. What a treat to have Mary here today. What a passion that she has shared. If you missed the sermon, I encourage you to get a copy of it because it's pretty powerful. And I asked her what she was going to talk about for our afternoon health club talk, and she said diseases and pops. Well, you know how I am about pop. I always think pop, I think of soda pop. And I thought, oh, she's going to talk about what diseases pop give us. But it has nothing to do with soda pop. So persistent organic pollutants, which I had knew nothing about. And I thought, does she even have a clue what she is talking about? So I went online and I looked up POP, and oh my goodness, there is all kinds of stuff out there. What is it? What is it about? What does it do to us? And so I'm so grateful that Mary could come and share with us. Before we begin, let's bow our heads for prayer. Father in heaven, again, what an opportunity on your precious and holy Sabbath that we can come together and learn more about our bodies and how you designed them to function and work. We're so grateful that out of Mary's extremely busy schedule that she has taken the time to come meet with us and share with us. And Lord, I pray that the message that she has not only for today but this week doesn't go on deaf ears, but that we absorb it and follow it and use it and share it. And I ask that your presence be here now with us. And please be over Mary as she speaks. We ask this in your precious and holy name. Amen. Amen.
Well, I said that I would share just a little bit with you the rest of the story. So before we get into disease and POPs, I'll just share with you that my family, my kids, we had our veggies restaurant for 8 years in Rapid City, South Dakota. And there were a lot of baptisms from that restaurant. As I said, 4 of the punk rockers, you know David Asher, Nathan Renner, you maybe don't know Justin White and Christian Hodé. Christian Hodé is still in Michigan as a pastor. Justin White and Nathan Renner are both in Sonora. And David, of course, is now in Eugene, Oregon, working with Light Bearers Ministry. So after 8 years, my children came to me and they said, oh, Mom, we're so burned out on this restaurant. Can we please? We want to go to Laurelwood Academy. And my husband and I kind of looked at each other, and we really didn't want our kids going off to Academy without us because we were a very close family. So we prayed, and we had a family that we wanted to buy our restaurant. If we were going to sell our restaurant, we wanted it to this family to buy it because we knew that they could run it. But they had just moved out of the Black Hills and gone to Weimar 3 months. They'd been gone. And we also knew we had a lot of realtors that ate in our restaurant, and we really knew, we had a pretty kind of a set price that we wanted for it. And we wanted a job at Laurelwood Academy. So we prayed this family would buy it and that they wouldn't argue with us about the price, and that Laurelwood Academy would employ us so we could be there with our children. So we contacted these people and they said, you guys are crazy. We just moved out of Rapid City. We just got to Weimar. Why would we want to come back there and do that? But then they kept emailing me. Has anybody made you an offer? I hadn't even offered it to anybody else. Nobody else knew it was for sale. Finally, a week later, after all these emails were going back and forth, I emailed them. I said, are you guys sure you don't want to buy our restaurant? And he emailed me back and said, we're coming. Can we stay with you for a week and see what we think? And they ran the restaurant with us for a week. And at the end of the week, he came to me and he said, okay, we're going to buy the restaurant. We're not going to argue with you about the price. And then we contacted Laurelwood Academy and told them that we had just sold our restaurant. Would they be interested in letting us come out there? And they said, we'll fly your whole family out here. And then they gave us a job. And the year we were at Laurelwood Academy, the next year they told us they were closing down and they were moving to Eugene, but they wanted us to move with them. And I worked with Laurelwood for 1 year, and then the following year, the Portland Oregonian, I did a health and nutrition seminar, and the Portland Oregonian came and they did a 2-page thing on this health and nutrition seminar. And people started calling, come to a seminar, come to a seminar. So I ended up not working for Laurelwood Academy. I ended up doing seminars up and down the coast of Oregon and into Washington State and into California. And I would schedule 3-4 seminars a month, and I was just having a riot doing that. And one day my phone rang, and it was David Ashrick, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, we're out here in Oregon, we just love it, and I'm doing seminars. Tom is still working for the school. He said, well, guess what you're going to be doing? And I said, what? And he said, you're going to move to Michigan and help me start my school called The Rise. And I said, guess what? I will never live in Michigan. I'm not going to Michigan. And he said, no, you have to come. And so then I talked to my family about it, and all of my whole entire family wanted to move to Michigan from Oregon. I mean, it was the strangest thing to me. I thought Oregon was the most gorgeous state I ever lived in. So I found myself moving up to Michigan, and I spent 2 years working with David, helping him get a Rise started, and I was going crazy. I started doing seminars in Michigan, and I got real busy doing seminars there and working for a Rise. But there was this thing in my heart, it's like I'm like a little bit like an addict, right? There's this thing that said, I gotta have a restaurant, I gotta have a restaurant, I gotta have a restaurant. And some friends of David's approached me, and they wanted to open a restaurant in Michigan, and we were trying to get this restaurant open, and it wasn't working, and I was getting very discouraged, and I was doing my seminars, and I told my husband, I said, I'm not leaving out of state anymore to do seminars, because we had my niece living with us. She was 8 years old, and I just didn't want to leave her anymore, because it just didn't seem like that was really helpful given her circumstances. So I told my husband, I'm not flying anymore. I'll only do seminars that I can drive back and forth from. And I had not said that more than a week, and my phone rang, and it was my Michigan conference phone. I was actually an employee of the Michigan conference. And I picked up the phone, and this voice on the other end of the phone said, is this Mary Burnt? And I said, yes. And she said, Mary Burnt, do you know where Damascus is? No, not Damascus, Macedonia. Do you know where Macedonia is? And I put my phone down, and I looked up, and I said, okay, where's Macedonia? How long do I have to be there? And please don't make me fly. Because I just knew, something about that voice and that question, I knew wherever her Macedonia was, that God wanted me to go. I just knew it. So I picked the phone back up and I said, where's your Macedonia? And she said, Ardmore, Oklahoma. And I said, who is this? She said, this is Erica Nedley. I said, how did you get my phone number? Because nobody has this phone number. She said, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. I said, well, why are you calling me? And she said, we have a health food store and a restaurant in Ardmore. It's being run by a board. And she said, it's failing miserably. And my husband was on his knees praying that God would send somebody to make it work. And while he was praying, the Lord said to him, call Mary Burnt. I said, and he gave you my phone number. Nobody had that phone number. She said, will you come? I said, I'm not coming to Ardmore, Oklahoma. I don't fly. I don't leave. I said, I can't do that. I said, listen, I'll tell you why your restaurant's failing right now. I can tell you over the phone. I know exactly how these things work. She said, no, we really want you to come. So I talked to my husband about it. He said, I think you better go. I said, yeah, I think I better go too. So I flew to Ardmore, Oklahoma. And I understand how ducks feel. When, they've been flying south and they're tired and they're probably getting discouraged and they just, water, water, water. Where's that lake? Where's that pond? Right? Because when I got to Ardmore and walked into that restaurant, I just felt like a duck going whoop right into the pond, right? And I thought, this is like too good to be true. And so while I was there, they asked me to come back and do my seminar. And I said, okay, I'll come back one more time and do my seminar. And when I came back to do my seminar, the people in Michigan that were trying to open a restaurant with me said, you know what, we're giving up because the city had been so miserable to us. You have no idea. It was Troy, Michigan, where we were trying to do it. And I went to Erica and I said, they just canceled my project. They're closing down my project. And Erica looked at me and she said, I'm having a very hard time feeling unhappy about that. And they said, would you come run this restaurant? And I said, no, I will not run a restaurant for anybody. I said, I can't get motivated that way. And they said, well, how could you get motivated? I said, if I owned it. And they said, well, we're going to give it to you. And they gave me the restaurant and the health food store. Now, they own the building and I pay them rent, but they gave me the restaurant and the health food store. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm really excited because every judge in town eats there. I have the main judge in town. I have his cell phone number in my phone because he calls me every day and asks me what's for lunch. And will you make me a salad? And I keep his phone number in case I get pulled over for speeding. He told me not to do that. But anyway, we've had a lot of baptisms from this restaurant as well. In fact, I had always wanted to preach my own my own evangelistic seminar. And our first one that we did, this is to God's honor and glory because we worked hard. We had a lot of young people helping us. I had a little school called Shine, School of Health Integrating Natural Remedies and Evangelism. And, but it just got to be too much because I was doing too much. But through Shine, we would do an evangelistic series, and I preached the first one. And we didn't get a lot of non-Adventists. We had 11 non-Adventists come, but 10 of them were baptized. And they're still in the church. And so the Lord really blessed. And now what I'm doing is I have a pretty wonderful group of friends there, and we do a prison ministry. Every Friday night, prisoners from a local work center come to Veggies for Vespers, and then we have popcorn and smoothies afterwards. And on Tuesday nights, I go into the local county jail, and I do Bible studies with the women there. And what I've done is I've started hiring them to work for me because they have, the recidivism rate in Ardmore is 97%. It's very high. And these women, nobody wants to hire them because they have felonies. And so they can only get, really not so great jobs, and nobody ever trains them, and they don't know how to live, and they don't know how to work. And so we have started hiring these women, and they are so grateful for a job that they just work really hard. And if we tell them to do it this way, they do it this way. And we've started working with them, and it's just such a wonderful thing. And the local hospital has asked us to take over part of the dietary in their, and this is a Catholic hospital, by the way. They've asked us to take over and replicate what we do at Veggies in their cafeteria there. And so when I go back, I'm talking to the vice president of the hospital and just finalize all the little details. And then I'm going to get some more of my girls from the jail to do that for me as well. And so it's really, really a blessing because these women, my husband will call me up. I leave early because my daughter's a teenager, and I feel like she needs some time outside of Veggies. She works with us, and then she does homeschool, and then we have horses. And so I leave early so that she can have time outside of the restaurant. But anyway, my husband will call me, and he'll tell me what the girls do, something the girls did that he you have to understand, Oklahoma's like a mission field anyway, on some level, because it's like a whole nother planet, really. They speak a different language. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. But he'll say, oh, Shelby was just yelling at a customer across the thing, and they were talking, and I said, honey, she doesn't know any better. And we're there to mentor her and train her. So all you got to do is just go, When I brought Shelby in, Shelby is 22 years old. Shelby, from the time she was 6 years old, has been molested by anybody and everybody. And she was raised by her dad, who's a recovered drug addict and a biker. And she's not, she hasn't had a real good start in life. She never had a mom. And her middle name is Love, Shelby Love. And so when I brought Shelby on board, when she came in, I looked at my husband and I said, behold your daughter. And my husband knew what I meant by that. And so when he called me up and, Shelby was, acting what was probably inappropriate for our business, I said, honey, you just treat her like your daughter. You just tell her, Shelby, it's better, if you want to talk to somebody, that's fine, but go up to the table and don't yell. You know what I'm saying? Mentor her. We have to mentor these women because they've not had experiences in life like we've all been. And listen, some of us I was there, okay? A lot of us were blessed to be raised in Adventist homes, though, and, we were raised with a mom and a dad who taught us how to behave appropriate in life. But it's a wonderful ministry, and these women come to me in the morning and they say, we got to pray. and they want to pray and they want to listen to the word. And so anyway, I'm really excited about that, about what we're doing there and about what's happening. And so keep our ministry in your prayers, please. And if you ever want a restaurant here, I think you guys need to find somebody who the Lord's been training. If there's any restaurant people out there, I think you guys need a restaurant here. You've got an active church. It seems like you'd have some good support. So pray for me, because as I was driving here, I got a phone call from somebody whose name I will not mention, from a place that I will not mention, that they're trying to get us to come there. And anyway, I'm thinking to myself, how could I ever leave all that we have going on in Ardmore? But you always have to be open to what God has always got a bigger, better plan, and I don't know what that is. So I'd appreciate your prayers. All right, so let's talk about disease and POPs. I don't know if any of you have read this book. It's an older book, but I love this book. It's called Spoiled. I wish she would update it. It's written from the standpoint of the CDC, and you would learn some interesting things. In fact, I have had several people who have told me when they read this book that they threw it across the room. It's that kind of book. It's very intense to read. One of the things that I learned reading this book that was just amazing to me, and by the way, there will be good news at the end of this, I promise. Because I promised my friend Vivian that I'd leave her with good news. I like to always leave people with good news, though. It's not all bad news. But it is really rather fascinating news in my always to be humble opinion. Do you know that 5 million people a year die of diarrhea? Yes. Now, in my humble opinion, this is not because there's a deficiency of Pepto-Bismol. Now, the author of this book, based on other things that, this book is very well documented. She makes the statement that in the United States, the number is 9,000, which is still a lot of people. It's around the world that it's 5 million, and it's because of things like cholera and other things. But it's really interesting that really in our country today, foodborne illness is rampant. And you just don't really, sure, you hear about recalls of this and of that, but you don't really get the big picture. Foodborne illness is huge. And most foodborne illness, friends, causes diarrhea and vomiting, right? Like my least favorite thing to do is to have vomiting. In fact, if you come to the seminar, I'll teach you how never to vomit again. It was big for me. I prayed about that one. I said, Lord, I don't have time for this, please. But when you have vomiting and diarrhea, most of us, we run through life going, oh, I have the stomach flu. But according to the CDC, vomiting and diarrhea has nothing to do with flu. Nothing. That's a misnomer. Stomach flu is a misnomer. Vomiting, well, let me just read it to you. This is interesting. The incidence of foodborne illness has been growing for some time. Official estimates that cases in the United States run as high as 80 million a year. 80 million a year. But recently, the CDC's Dr. Morris Potter pushed that number up even higher. He suggested in the Harvard Health Letter that every person in our country probably has at least one episode of food poisoning a year, which would include vomiting and diarrhea. He points out that that would put the number at over 300 million cases a year. Most of what doctors and the public refer to as stomach flu is actually food poisoning. Influenza is a problem that epidemiologists will repeatedly tell you is in the respiratory system. Now, to me, this was really fascinating. So, there are things like rotavirus that can also cause vomiting and diarrhea. I'll tell you how I helped Dr. Nedley's family through rotavirus when we first came to Ardmore. If you come to the class, I don't want to get into it too much now, but this is really fascinating to me because, see, what is happening is we're factory farming every animal that we now eat, basically, okay? So chickens aren't out there scratching in the grass and doing normal chicken things. They're now being factoryized. That's probably not a word, but we've created these massive places where 150,000 chickens will be in a huge house, a hut. They're kind of like Quonset huts, right? And disease is so rampant among them. We do the same thing with pigs. In fact, if you want a really interesting book to read, this is an older book also, but fascinating. It reads like a good novel, but it's a true story. It's called And the Waters Turn to Blood. And it's the story of a factory pig farm in North Carolina, and they have 100,000 pigs in this place, and they don't have sewage. Like if you had 100,000 people in one area, you would have to have a sewage system. They don't have to do that in these factory farms. They build lagoons, and one day the lagoon broke. So now you have massive amounts of pig sewage that just take a natural course, and they end up in the waterways of North Carolina, and it began to spread a red tide, and the red tide killed hundreds of millions of fish. And then it began to affect people. And you don't hear about that on the news, right? Because the lobby for pork and for beef and for dairy and for chicken, they are massive money makers for politicians. So we don't talk about too much of this kind of stuff. But somebody needs to talk about it because disease is rampant. And if you have vomiting and diarrhea, you have probably gotten bad bacteria in your food somehow. Now, it can be through cross-contamination. If you get a rotavirus, even that is past oral fecal, okay? And one of the things that in our country with these factory farms, for instance, in a factory farm that's doing chickens, there's no law or regulation that says they have to scoop the litter out at all. Hence, they don't scoop that manure and the feces and the litter from the chickens out, but every couple of years. Over in Europe, they have to do it between flocks. Here, we don't have any regulations. So we were doing my health and nutrition seminar in Ardmore, and this man had come, and we called him the dolphin guy because he always had a dolphin in his ear. And we were talking about this at the seminar, and the dolphin guy said, I was an FBI agent prior to being a customs agent. And he said, in the course of being an FBI agent, one time we had to do a stakeout at one of those big chicken farms. He said, and I'm on the tractor going into the chicken farm with the farmer. He's going to show me, where to go. And we're on the tractor. Tractor's moving slowly. Chicken farmer looks down at me and says, son, did you bring another pair of shoes? And the dolphin guy said, no, I didn't think I needed another pair of shoes. And the farmer said, how long do you think you're going to be in my coop? And the dolphin guy said, I don't have a clue. It just depends on how the stakeout goes. It might be, 2 days. It might be 2 weeks. And the farmer said, son, going to need a couple more pairs of shoes then. And the dolphin guy said, I don't understand. He said, you'll understand pretty soon. And he said, when we got to the chicken coop, he got out and showed me which coop it was. And he said, he opened the door and said, have a nice day, and patted me on the back. And he said, the manure was up to my ankles. He said, I burned out a pair of shoes every 2 days in that coop. Well, you can imagine what the disease is like then, right? And we're pumping these chickens then full of antibiotics and full of other things to keep the disease down to a dull roar. But in his book, and this is another one of my favorite books, Food Revolution, I really appreciate John Robbins. Are any of you familiar with John Robbins? He was the heir to the Baskin and Robbins fortune, and he told his family that they could keep their fortune because they had earned it making people sick, and he has not accepted 1 penny of the Baskin and Robbins fortune, despite the fact that he was an heir to that fortune. And he writes books. He wrote Diet for a New America. You may have heard of it. I highly recommend his books. Now, his philosophy is radically different than our philosophy, but his books are excellent. Let me read you, and he's well documented. He's not just writing stuff. Let me read you what he has to say about this. One of the major diseases that they're finding from these factory farmed chickens is Campylobacter. And he says here, the poultry industry does not dispute that the majority of chicken carcasses and parts sold in United States supermarkets are contaminated with Campylobacter. According to the CDC numbers, Campylobacter kills more Americans every year than E. coli and is increasing even more rapidly. People in the United States who become ill with Campylobacter every day, the number is 5,000. Primary source of Campylobacter bacteria, contaminated chicken flesh. American chickens sufficiently contaminated with Campylobacter to cause illness. Are you ready for this? 70%. American turkeys sufficiently contaminated with Campylobacter to cause illness, 90%. Number of hens in 3 commercial flocks screened for Campylobacter by University of Wisconsin researchers, 2,300. Number of hens that were not infected with Campylobacter, 8. And Campylobacter, Salmonella, some of us are old enough to remember when Salmonella was a disease that you worried about if the egg was cracked, right? And then you didn't have to worry about it. Chickens now inherently carry Salmonella. It's now within their very ovaries. That bacteria is now carried within their very ovaries. Now, they also are a huge factor in E. coli contamination. And I'm not sharing this to offend anybody here, but I think you really need to understand how bad this is. In fact, according to, well, I think he talks about it here. I know she talks about it in there too. According to, let me see if I can find it in here, because this is really, really fascinating. According to the Time magazine, a USDA microbiologist by the name of Gerald Kuster said this about processed chicken. The final product is no different than if you stuck it in the toilet and ate it. Now that sounds like gross hyperbole. In fact, the reality is worse. A recent study by the University of Arizona found more coliform bacteria in the kitchen of the average American household than on the rim of the toilet of the average American household. The report of this study in Science News discreetly did not mention where this gross contamination came from. The only reasonable explanation is that it arrives as a bonus on the animal foods people bring into their kitchens. The bathroom is cleaner, well, according to the report, because people don't wash their chickens, or the bathroom is cleaner because that's not where people are washing their chickens. Now, Good Morning America did a whole thing on this. This is so interesting to me. They had an expert come on and tell people how to buy chicken because of this very problem, okay? So what the expert said was, if you're gonna bring chicken into your kitchen, you have to do this. You get a plastic bag as you walk into the grocery store. Grab one of their plastic bags. Do all of your shopping first. Then go get your chicken. Put it in the plastic bag. Put that on the bottom of your cart. Have it the last thing that gets rung up and leave it in the cart until you get rung up, because you don't want it dripping and contaminating your food. And when you get home with it, they said, be sure it's the bottom thing in your car and separated from the other food. And when you get home with it, take it directly to your freezer, still in the plastic bag. And that's the safest way to bring chicken into your home. And here's the problem, friends. See, it's so good. We're cross-contaminating these animals because we're not cleaning out the litter in their houses where they're being massively raised. And then we're eviscerating them with machines, which are not always accurate. And then we're bringing them into our homes, and we're contaminating our kitchens, because if you bring that into your home and you put it on a cutting board and you chop it up, and then you take the dish rag and you wipe the cutting board, and then you go clean the stove and you clean off the refrigerator and the counters, and whatever you do, don't wipe Junior's face with it, okay? But see, you've now spread that all around your home. That passable bacteria is now all around your kitchen anyway, in your home. And this is why so many people end up with vomiting and diarrhea, and you'll have clusters of it because everybody's eating the same thing from the store. Now, as a restaurant, when I went through, I did a 6-week training in Michigan to serve safe, to serve food safe. Half of it I didn't even need to be there for, because most of what they're worried about is contamination from animal products. But the highest temperature food, the food that has to be cooked, the highest temperature internally is, most of us think pork, right? It's chicken. Chicken, 165 degrees internal temperature. Pork, 145 degree internal temperature. You know why? Because at this point in time, chicken is more contaminated than pork. So if in my restaurant, if I were to have these kind of foods in my restaurant, they even have a way to stack it on your shelves. You put the beef here, and then the pork, and then the chicken. The chicken always has to go on the bottom, okay? So what we're dealing with today is we're dealing with massive amounts of bacteria that is in our food because of factory farming. So you have Campylobacter, you have Listeria, you have Salmonella, you have E. coli. Now, something else that I think is very, very fascinating is that we really also have to think about mad cow. Now, they've got, mad cow is very hushed. You rarely hear anything. But I was living in Michigan in 2003 when George Bush put into law that we were no longer going to allow downer cows into the food chain. And as I read that article, and I wish I had saved it, but I have so many articles. As I read that article, I thought to myself, who was the rocket scientist that allowed downer cows into the food chain in the first place, right? Like, you know what a downer cow is, right? It's a cow that's healthy one day, and then the next day it can't get up because it is so sick. Now, my dad is a urologist, but he was a wannabe rancher. And I grew up on a 580-acre ranch. Well, we lived in town, but we had the ranch. And I had a great big Pinto, 16-hand high Pinto stallion that he gelded for me. And, 500 acres becomes kind of small when you got this big horse. So for fun, what I used to do with my friends, we would sneak up to our dead cow pile. We would go downwind of the dead cow pile and sneak up on it because you might see eagles or you might see fox or, we really thought that was cool, right? Well, you know why we had a dead cow pile? Well, yeah, and because my dad is a doctor and he's smart enough to know that you don't put a downer cow into the food chain. Now, this is what I tell people. By the way, they rarely, and in fact, I would say they almost never go in and try to determine if somebody died of Creutzfeldt-Jakob, which is mad cow disease, the human version of mad cow disease. You know why they don't do that? Because once you get those prions on surgical equipment or anywhere, that you can't get rid of them. The sterilization process does not get rid of them. So we're not real excited about opening somebody's brain to see if that's what they died of. Plus, it's very bad press for the people that are, the beef lobby and the dairy lobby. It's all very bad press. So we don't really know. We really don't know how many people are actually dying of that. There are people that die of it, though. So this is what I tell people when they come to my class. If you want to be safe, first of all, eat your food without a colon. Thank you. Eat your food without a colon, right? I love broccoli. It doesn't have a colon. Apples, they don't have colon either. Eat your food without a colon. You will be healthier. You will be safer, and your kitchen will be cleaner. But as my best friend in Ardmore, Oklahoma, she owns Smoking Joe's barbecue pit. Okay, so I have a lot of friends there that choose to eat food with a colon. If you're going to choose to eat food with a colon, you need to come to our seminar on Wednesday night, and I'll show you how to not get sick from it, okay? There is a way to not get sick. And I have to tell you that it works 100% of the time. In fact, this works so well that in my constant running conversation with the Lord that goes on in my head, one day I said, Lord, I'm pretty sure that this is the way to treat E. coli. Why are we not treating kids with E. coli like this? And I said, if you want to give me, I just sort of flippantly said, if you want to give me E. coli and let me test this out, that would, be okay with me. And then I said, oh, not really, just kidding. Well, my daughter and I used to have our horses out at our friend's ranch who owns the barbecue pit. And she has cows out there. And right in front of where we have to go to get our saddles, there was a place where in the winter, when it got really cold that winter, the cows all congregated there. And so when cows all congregate in one place, you know what you get, right? Yes. And if you'll forgive me, please, I called it poop soup. I was like, Brianna, watch out for the poop soup. And then it became dehydrated. And so it was just dry and didn't think, and then we weren't so worried about it. Well, in the summertime in Ardmore, it gets up into the You know how hot it gets. It gets hot. Oh, 90s. That's a cooling thing for us. We get into 110, 115. It was 100 plus degrees, and we were out horseback riding. So what I do is I ice a water bottle, and I would take it out there, and by the time we got done horseback riding, it would be melted but still cold enough to kind of help me feel a little cooler. I dropped my iced water bottle in the dehydrated soup. I looked at my daughter, my niece daughter, and I said, do not. I immediately, right, I know. I said, do not drink out of this water bottle. Whatever you do, this water bottle is now contaminated. Do not drink out of it. We went on our ride, we came back. I was so dehydrated that I thought, oh, go wash it off. And I'm so dehydrated that I just can't even do that. I flipped the lid off and I drank out of that bottle. And I knew better. And then I just took enough of a drink to get hydrated again and then dumped it out. Well, I didn't let Brianna drink out of it. Praise God. At 3 o'clock that morning, I woke up because I heard a voice telling me to do the treatment that I know to do for vomiting and diarrhea. And I felt fine. And I thought, oh, this is just all in your head. Go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep, and I woke up about 15 minutes later because I heard the voice tell me again to do this treatment. And I knew now that, I said, Lord, I'm fine. I feel great. I don't, I gotta get some sleep. I gotta get up in the morning. I went back to sleep. I felt fine until 10 o'clock. And at 10 o'clock, at 5 seconds to 10, I felt fine. At 10 o'clock that morning, I got hit with the worst, most violent illness I have ever had in my entire life. I was so sick that I just dropped. And the pain was, I can't even tell you, and all of a sudden I had the vomiting and the diarrhea, and I crawled to our bathroom, and I called my husband on my cell phone and said, you got to get that stuff in the bathroom for me right now. I am dying. And I know that I had E. coli. I am so positive about it that nobody else got sick, for one thing. But I took this treatment, and praise God, 2 hours later I was fine, but it took a while. It was 2 hours of sheer misery. So there are ways to take care of it if you have illness from these things. But I would just recommend that you be very, very careful about what you're eating, because so much of our food is contaminated. So much of our food is contaminated in our day and age. And the other thing that it's contaminated with, as I was telling Vivian, are the POPs. Now, this is very interesting, because POPs are persistent organic pollutants. So we quit manufacturing dioxin in this country years ago, right? We quit manufacturing it, but I have news for you. Until Jesus comes and recreates it, it's here. It's in the air, it's in the soil, it's in the water, it's here. And so dioxin, according to the World Health Organization, and there's more than just dioxin, there's DDT, all of these chemicals that we have created to spray on weeds and other things, all of them are persistent organic pollutants. We've really made a mess of the planet. Here's the good news. Well, let me give you the bad news first, because the good news is so good that we'll share it at the end. Scientists are now discovering that many of these chemicals cause irreversible damage in people and animals at levels that were dismissed as inconsequential by the experts less than 10 years ago. How many of you remember Lake Apopka and the chemical spill they had in Lake Apopka in Florida? Well, there's a big chemical spill, probably 20 years ago, and now Lake Apopka is basically dead. I don't know if they've tried to revitalize it, but it's basically dead because the male alligators develop female traits, and the female alligators develop male traits, and the fish and everything, it messed everything up. and nobody could breed anymore and create new life. Well, this is what POPs do. The catalog of destructive effects of POPs is long and growing, from cancer and reproductive health effects to learning disorders and reduced immunity. People receive about 90% of their total intake of these compounds from foods of animal origin. Okay, and that's because there's this little process in life called biomagnification. So a cow eating grass that grows, even if they haven't sprayed that grass, it's still getting some POP, it's still getting some dioxin, it's still getting some chemicals because they're there. It's just there. Even if they don't spray anymore, it's still going to be there. And what happens is it tends to get in their fat cells, and it just accumulates, right? It doesn't ever go away, it just continues to accumulate. Dioxin is an extraordinarily carcinogenic and perilous threat to the biological integrity of human beings and the environment. The EPA says that 95% of human dioxin exposure comes from red meat, fish, and dairy products. Now, I hope there's no Ben and Jerry fans in here. So great is the contamination of animal products today with dioxin that even those meat and dairy companies that are trying to offer healthful alternatives find it nearly impossible today to provide pure food. Ben & Jerry's, for example, seeks to be environmentally aware and to use milk from family farms. The company's promotional literature and website state that dioxin is known to cause cancer, genetic and reproductive defects, and learning disabilities. According to Ben & Jerry's, the only safe level of dioxin exposure is no exposure. And yet, listen to this. So pervasive is dioxin in dairy, meat, and fish products today that in November 1999, a level of dioxin 200 times greater than the virtually safe dose determined by the EPA was found in Ben & Jerry's vanilla ice cream. In fact, a study presented at the Dioxin 2007 conference in August found levels of dioxin in a sample serving of Ben & Jerry's brand ice cream are approximately 2,200 times greater than the level of dioxin allowed in a serving of wastewater discharged into the San Francisco Bay from the Tosco refinery. So it's very, very prevalent, but the greatest levels of it are found in the animal foods because the animals store the dioxin, the DHT, and all of these different chemicals in their cells. And so when we eat the animal, we're getting that level that is much higher than if we were just to eat the plants. So here's the good news. And there really is good news. Because God is so awesome. You know, He gave us a diet plan in the beginning. Genesis 1:29, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is a fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. You know, it's interesting. The word meat originally didn't mean what we think of it today. It originally meant food. So God said, look, I've given you fruit, nuts, grains. Do you know when He added vegetables? After the fall, post-fall. And in my simple mind, I think, well, thank you, Lord, for adding the vegetables, because after the fall, now we have disease, right? We now have disease, and God in His infinite wisdom knows that those vegetables are the very thing we need to prevent disease. And friends, get them in their raw state, as raw as possible, because that's when you get the most out of them. You get the most minerals, the most vitamins, the most phytochemicals that will help to prevent these diseases. And here's something else that provides for us. And I do a whole little section on my talk about this, but I'll give you a little tease from it. one of the things that fruits, all of these things have in common, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and nuts have in common. They all have fiber. And do you know what one of the greatest things that fiber does for our body is? It sweeps away the toxins. It is fascinating. There's a book called Eat Right, Live Longer. It's written by Neil Barnard, well-known name. He's written Food for Life and some other really good books. And in Eat Right, Live Longer, he describes that process, how exactly that works, where one of the types of fiber wraps around the toxins and the other fiber sweeps it out of the body. And they've done studies at Loma Linda University where they've taken rats and mice, fed them foods that were basically, good whole foods, broccoli, almonds, carrots, but they weren't organic. Okay, they were just commercially grown. So you know that they've got chemicals on them, right? Because commercially grown food has chemicals. Then they took a group of rats and they fed them junk foods and foods that didn't have so much fiber. Twinkies, Ho-Ho, Pop-Tarts, white bread, potato chips. That other group of rats got that. When they sacrificed the rats on the junk food, no fiber diet, showed accumulation of toxin in their cells. The rats on the whole food diets did not have those toxins accumulating because the fiber had done its job. And the fiber will do its job in your body. See, people worry, and they want to know, well, should I eat this organic? And yes, of course I think organic is best. But I have news for you. Where are you truly going to get a food on this planet that is not contaminated with something? I would like to know where that food is. Now, yes, I do choose to eat organically, especially corn, wheat, soy, because those are heavily genetically modified and they don't have a clue what that's doing to our bodies. So I try to always eat those things organic. But friends, it's not practical for all of us to eat everything organically. It's very hard for people unless you have a farm or a garden to do that. God has an answer for that. He put the fiber in the food. And if the fiber is there, then it's going to keep your body cleaned out. And I highly recommend that you start thinking about that fiber factor. Because it's one of the most important things that we get in food is the fiber. Because it does so much. And we're going to talk so extensively about that at the seminar. It's really, really a very powerful factor in food. So that's just kind of skimming the surface. I highly recommend these books because you will be very well informed. And again, as I said, these are written from the CDC paradigm, and John Robbins' books are very, very well documented. He doesn't make any kind of statements without well documenting them, and I appreciate that about his writing. And his books are very fun to read. They're easy reads. They're not, sometimes it's harder to read books that are written by people who are highly educated because they write more for their peer group. And for me, I like it simple. Help me understand this so that I can explain it to other people. Does anybody have any questions about disease or persistent organic pollutants? I might not have an answer, but I can try. Yes?
I just want to know, who was the author of that book's quote?
Nichols Fox, and it's Fox. And like I said, it is an older book, but it's still so very appropriate for our day. Friends, this isn't getting better. You understand that, right? This is not like something that's getting better. It's actually staying the same or getting worse. This lady and then this gentleman.
Do you think we should be washing our vegetables in food-grade peroxide?
I think it's good to wash our vegetables in something, for sure. I mean, whether it be food-grade peroxide, How many of you have heard of grapefruit seed extract? You know, that nasty tasting stuff, but just a few drops of that in water would be good to spray on food, or they make other fruit and vegetable washes. I absolutely think that that is very appropriate and, you know, is something that you could consider doing. Yes?
Yeah, I heard on the news, there's kind of like a cover-up, the mad cow thing in Wisconsin, and the U.S. agricultural secretaries as well. I'm going out and have me a beef dinner tonight. And I said, what a fool. But I come to find out that this disease, it's a protein, it's not a bacteria, so you can't kill it.
No, that's right.
That's dangerous. I mean, wow.
And I wish I could remember the name of the book. Maybe it'll come to me. But I read a book written by the man who discovered the prion. And we talk about a little bit about this at the seminar too. He says that you should never even consider using a vitamin supplement that is made out of the organs of cows. Like, you know, people want us to carry this and that, and we just won't do it. Because he said those are dangerous. He said, do not ever use bone meal around your roses, because you can inhale it. And, you know, he just had a lot of things in this book, and I'll think of the name of it. If I don't, I'll Google it and find it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it is so ridiculous when a politician gets up there. Well, Tony Blair did that when they found the Creutzfeldt-Jakob in the UK, right? He had the big hamburger, and I mean, it's just, it's so ridiculous, and so much of it is about money. So much of it is about money. And P.S., friends, all of this aside, if we would just feed everybody on this planet a vegetarian diet and quit feeding all these things to the cows, we'd be way ahead of the game anyway. Because you can take an acre of ground, and if you feed people instead of cows off that acre, if you grow food for people instead of for cows, you can feed 100 people versus 10 feeding them cows. So there's so many other reasons why it just makes much more sense. You know, we're living on the edge of our food supply. They used to have a food bank, and we're on the edge of that. If there were a huge disaster in this country, we probably wouldn't have enough food because they're feeding it to cows so that cows can feed people. And it just, on so many levels, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Makes dollars, but it doesn't make sense. Yes? The first book is called Spoiled. And I would look for it on Amazon. That would probably be the best place to find it. Yes, sir. I'm not a fan of pre-washed salad. We don't serve it at my store. We wash everything by hand. And, you know, that's partly why the hospital wants me to do wants me to replicate my salad bar. Part of the reason I don't like them is because they hide little things, and if you actually go through it and rewash it yourself, you'll see some of those things that are in there, and I don't want people biting into something that isn't perfectly 100% fresh and tasty, you know, so I'm not a fan. Just not a fan. But, you know, if that's the best you can do, then I would do that. Because that's better than not eating salad. Yes?
On the health food side of your store, what are your top 3 favorite brands of supplements?
Of supplements? AOR, Solar Ray, and Nature's Plus. And I've talked to the scientists at Nature's Plus extensively about a lot of things, and they're really, I mean, they're great. The guy I talked to is educated way beyond an average doctor, and he's actually does a lot of the development, and he's really a good guy, and he is willing to talk to you anytime you call him and explain things to you. In fact, their vitamin D3 is the only vegetarian vitamin D3. Vitamin D2 is great, but vitamin D2 only affects your bone health. It doesn't affect your immune health. You need vitamin D3 to do both. But vitamin D3 typically is an animal product. And they're doing one of the only vegetarian forms of vitamin D3, and he's the scientist that actually came up with how to do that. So that's Nature's Plus. They have a chewable vitamin D3 that it's made out of, it comes from algae, because algae produces it as well. So it's really good. Okay, any other, yes?
I just want to say thank you, and what you said makes so much sense, Mary. Do you know why? Because I got an article from Japan. She emailed me about that lady who was a victim of atomic bomb, 1942 or 41. I don't know, remember. But anyway, she was in a two mile from that atomic bomb that dropped center, you know. And she was really angry because of that things, and then she was fascinated about the fact that atomic bomb, so she majored physics in college, and she became professor of physics. But when someone came to the town, and she was invited to seminar, and that speaker looked at that lady and said, "Boy, you sure got ugly face." And so lady said, "Wow, that's not kind. I suffered so much from an atomic bomb." And so she explained, "Oh, because I'm a victim of atomic bomb." And that speaker said, "You don't have to be a victim of and just get on the brown rice. Eat brown rice is 30 days, something like that." So she was so, she wanted to get rid of all that ugly face. So she got on the brown rice, and she said, little by little, she said she did not eat anything, no vegetable, nothing, no fruit, just brown rice, 3 meals a day. She did 30 days or whatever. She lost weight, but her face getting, healed little by little. And now she looks like normal, and she said, everybody said, "Oh, you got the atomic bomb, you're not going to live, you never have children, you never have them, blah, 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 blah." And she's now 75 years old.
Amen.
And she said, she has a husband, her husband is also professor. And anyway, so, what you said really, really makes sense, because the fiber in the brown rice is the one took out all the chemical, whatever.
She could have never done that with white rice.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That would not have happened, I guarantee it.
So it really makes sense.
Yes. One last question.
Okay. If you grow something organically grown, what about the GMO?
Well, you can buy heirloom seeds so that you're not getting genetically modified heirloom seeds, but if genetically modified is a problem, and they don't really know how big the problem is, but in Europe, they don't allow it. They're not allowing it in Europe. For some reason over here, well, we know the reason. It always goes back, follow the money trail. Okay, it's always about money. Monsanto, it has a lot of money, and in the seminar, we're going to talk about this, because I was in Minnesota with a bunch of farmers doing a seminar like this, and these farmers came to me and told me all about what was going on. But you can watch Food Inc. That's a wonderful DVD that has a lot of information about that, but I would avoid GMOs. I would not eat corn, wheat, or soy that was not organic. Because right now, if it's genetically modified, they cannot call it organic, at least right now. Yes?
I'm sorry, but where do you find organic soy? Because I thought Monsanto had the entire
No, they don't.
market.
They don't have the entire market. We get our organic soy from Tree of Life. I am absolutely positive, and we'll talk about this during the seminar too. If you're not ordering from UNFI, do you know them? You can get it from them. You can get organic soy from tofu and soybeans from them as well. I'm sorry. Is that okay?
Last question.
Oh, and do you guys have a Whole Foods here?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, they do have organic soy foods there too? Okay, good. GMO free. If it's organic, it's GMO free. Okay, awesome.
There's an organic soy farm in Lawrence. That makes tofu and that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. Well, I hope you're all coming to the seminar. It's very exciting. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll eat good food. If you're coming, come hungry. And I promise you that I will refund your 8 hours. I'll give you back your 8 hours somehow if you don't enjoy the seminar.
If you haven't signed up for her seminar and you want to, Nancy, raise your hand. She's the lady to sign up for, and tomorrow night you can bring your money, but we do need a head count of those that are going to be participating. I just wanted to throw a couple comments in. When you talk about down cows, I would think too, who would put their cow that's ill in the system? But, I travel quite a bit, and I was just with one of my groups, and one of the guys had a sick cow, and he was talking about his cow. I said, well, what'd you do with it? He goes, well, I called them up so they could get it butchered before it fell down. So that's what's in our food system. So I guess when Mrs. White told us what we should be eating, how we shouldn't be eating animal products, we're getting more and more told, with all the diseases. Next month, Jim Wentworth over here is going to be, did you know that? Is going to be doing our health club talk, and he's going to be talking about gardening. Anything else you want to say you're going to be talking about? We haven't talked about gardening for some time, and part of this is about learning how to garden so you can be doing your own things. So anyway, let's bow our heads for prayer as we all leave here today. Father in heaven, we thank you again for the opportunity to have Mary here and share with us. And on this gorgeous, beautiful Sabbath that you have provided, we pray that we will go out and share you with all that we come in contact with. Thank you for your great love and your kindness and your grace towards us. And please be with each one of us as we leave here today. We ask this in your precious and holy name. Amen. Amen. Anybody has questions for Mary? She will be here yet for a little bit.
Jim, do you have more service?
You want those things? And